Oh, Nicole, before I forget, could you start the recording, please?
Done.
Thank you. Okay, so today we have a very special 2-in-1 lunch and learn session where we have with us our honorary member, I almost said honorable, Ambassador Joan Underwood, with us this afternoon to share with us on the topic, I'm forgetting. 1 second, I want to get it right. My. As persons are coming in, I am so sorry. I need to make sure I get my is a practical guide to the three most common managerial challenges. Thank you very much. So there we are. And this afternoon, like I said, with us we have Ambassador Joan Underwood, and we are so happy to have her with us today, sharing with us on this topic. She is recently published author, and you see from your screen that her book, Manager's First Aid Kit, is now available. So I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that as well in a few minutes. Ambassador Underwood is no stranger to us, to many of us. I don't want to assume, so I wanted to share with you a brief introduction by way of her bio, so that for those of you who are not aware. Ambassador Joan H Underwood holds a master's degree in health services administration from the George Washington University and an executive MBA from the Cave Hill School of Business, University of the West Indies. She's a senior management consultant and policy advisor with extensive experience in both the public and private sectors. Specific areas of expertise include the design and facilitation of training programs for public and private sector leaders, organizational behavior and management, human resource management, strategic planning and management, change management, corporate governance, public sector transformation, and executive and performance coaching. Ms. Underwood's professional designation include that of a senior professional in human resources, SPHR, from US-based HR Certification Institute, the Society for Human Resource Management Senior Certified Professional, SHRM SCP, and most recent professional accomplishment include certification by the Human Capital Institute, Strategic Workforce Planning and Change Practitioner, as certified by PROSI Canada and the Change Management Learning Center. Ambassador Underwood is also a member of the Human Resource Management Association of Barbados and an honorary member of Human Resources Professionals of Antigua and Barbuda. HRPAB's charter stipulates, that this designation may be granted to individuals who have become eminent in the field of human resource management and who are deemed capable and or reputable to promote the purpose of HRPAB. In January 2012, Ms. Underwood became one of the principal driving forces behind the Caribbean Leadership Project, serving as the regional project manager and later as a facilitator in the flagship leadership development program targeting the most senior civil servants in 12 CARICOM countries. In addition to her work in coaching, management, and policy, Joan served for 7.5 years as countries including Mexico, Venezuela, Chile, and Brazil. Joan's leadership journey is featured in Championing Women Leaders as one of the 27 case studies of outstanding women leaders in the Commonwealth. She's also the author of Manager's of Manager's First Aid Kit, a practical guide that helps new, aspiring, and experienced managers successfully navigate the challenges associated with managing self, managing others, and managing systems and processes. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome this afternoon our presenter, Ambassador Joan H Underwood. Ambassador Underwood, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be home, and it's good to be among fellow HR practitioners in Antigua and Barbuda. And thank you so very much for the opportunity to spend some time with you this afternoon. I'm looking forward to having an engaging discussion. And so please feel free to engage by putting comments into the chat, and later on we'll have the opportunity to have open discussions. But I want to begin by sharing a brief presentation with you. And so here we go, the outline. I'll begin by listing some of the pitfalls that are typically associated with what I refer to as leveling up, and that's transitioning from individual contributor to leader or manager. And in some organizations, it will be at a supervisory level. For some individuals, we're talking about a managerial position. Having identified the pitfalls, I'll then go on to identify the top 3 challenges that managers need to master. And while I originally targeted the book towards new and aspiring managers, the feedback that I've been getting, and not just from Antigua and Barbuda, but across the board, is that the content is really resonating with experienced managers as well. So we'll discuss the challenges, which fall into 3 main buckets: managing self, managing others, and managing systems and processes. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have the opportunity to engage with a Q&A session. So what emotions do you think people would typically experience when they find out that they are going to be promoted to a managerial position? So based on my work, here's the range that my clients have described to me. Right? And some are really positive and others are like, holy blank. What am I going to do? Am I ready for it? Cold sweat. You know, sick to my stomach in terms of whether or not I can actually do this. So let's look at some statistics. 53% of newly appointed managers have indicated that they didn't actually have an accurate understanding of what it meant to be a manager. Now remember, these are people who have been appointed to managerial positions, and they're saying, I didn't really know what it would entail. This for me is perhaps the most worrisome of all the statistics. 60% of new managers either fail outright or underperform during their first 2 years. Folks, that's more than half. All right, again, more than half. 51% of managers said that they felt unprepared for their first managerial role. Now, this is from a study that was published in the US. I did a study, survey myself just last month, and the numbers were even worse in my study. 70% said that they felt unprepared when they got their first managerial role. And as HR practitioners, clearly this is something that would be of concern to us. Again, more than half of new managers said that they learned through trial and error. And of course, there is space, there is scope for trial and error. But if that's your primary learning mechanism, then the organization is not getting the best value, and it can be very stressful for the individuals who are going through this experience. Only 39% of managers reported that they received training from their employers to prepare them for this managerial role. So folks, not good enough. The same managers who provided the last statistic, i.e. saying that they didn't get training from their employers, when they were asked to rank their top training needs, preparation for the transition to the managerial role came in as number 2 out of 10 of the most important training intervention. So while I started out by saying, that I like cool statistics, these stats aren't really cool. They're more scary than cool. So what are some of the pitfalls or hidden unsuspected dangers associated with this transition? The reality is the skills and competencies that enable someone to excel as an individual contributor or a knowledge worker, a technical worker, line staff, whatever terminology you use to refer to it, those are not the same skills and competencies that they need in order to succeed as managers. And I know that you know this. Managing people is the most challenging task that you'll ever undertake. But there's a caveat. It can also be the most rewarding if you get it right. Another pitfall, as human beings, we all have blind spots and we can't manage what we don't know. So we may think that we're cooking with gas, that we're showing up, very well and everybody's as pleased as punch with us. Whereas, eyebrows are being raised and people are wondering what the heck is going on. So first job is to find out and to develop self-awareness. And once you have the self-awareness, then we can go to self-regulation. But more on that in a little bit. So having those blind spots is an issue. Being a manager can be very stressful because, again, it comes back to being responsible for the performance of others. So as a line staff, as a knowledge worker, as technical experts, we're responsible for our jobs, for our what we produce. We become a manager, then we're responsible for ensuring that everybody else does their job. And that can be really stressful. All right. And when you're line staff, you can rely on someone else, on HR, on your supervisor, on your boss to be your advocate. So you go to them and then you expect them to fight the battles for you. Once you join the managerial rights, you're the one who has to be the advocate, including being your own best advocate. And these are things for which people are not necessarily prepared, of which they're not necessarily aware before they assume a managerial role. So remember, some folks said, the majority of folks said in my survey, 70% of them, that they didn't actually know what to expect when they leveled up, when they became managers. 40%, and this is an Office Vibe survey, 40% said they didn't even receive a clear list of responsibilities when they were appointed. So they're told that they're becoming a manager, but no one bothered to explain to them the precise scope of work. So just to ensure that we're on the same page in what we're talking about going forward, for the purpose of this discussion, the high-level managerial responsibilities that my book will equip you to carry out and equip readers to carry out will be to develop, support, coach, motivate, and reward employees. It will also help to establish goals and performance standards, to implement and maintain work systems, policies, and procedures, and to network and to act as a liaison between employees and upper management. And some folks, the introverts amongst us, the thought of having to network, may not exactly fill us with joy, might not float our boat, but if you're going to be a successful manager, networking is part of the scope, part of what you must do to succeed. So the book is structured into 3 main challenges, as I mentioned before: managing self, managing others, and managing systems and processes. So we'll drill down in each of these. And while the discussion won't be exhaustive, in each case, I'll give you 3 examples which tie back into the various chapters in the book. So let's start with managing self. And of course, emotional intelligence has to be where we begin that conversation. And this quotation, when I first came across it a couple of years ago, I was actually taken aback, because while I am absolutely persuaded that emotional intelligence is the single most valid and reliable predictor of leadership success, I didn't expect the numbers to be this high. So you see that Warren Bennis has said that emotional intelligence accounts for as much as 85 to 90% of success at work. I mean, that is huge. The second issue in terms of managing self is to be able to differentiate between responsibility, accountability, and blame. And I devote an entire chapter in my book to this because far too often we have organizations where the culture is about blame. It's not about responsibility or accountability, but it's about blame. I remember when I was managing the Caribbean Leadership Project, one of the permanent secretaries said to me, Joan, you guys need to put a new module in the program. And I was like, and what would that be? And they were like, how to manage from under the bus, because these politicians always throwing us under the bus. So we might as well stay under there and learn how to operate from under there. So that's one approach. But what I decided to do in the book is to help you to figure out how not to end up under the bus. And at this point, I'd like to share a reading from the book that deals with this particular topic: responsibility, accountability, and blame. So each chapter in the book starts with a quotation. I love collecting quotations. And so for each chapter, I picked one that's meaningful for me and that relates to the subject matter. And so this title, chapter 5, is Where the Buck Stops. And the lead quotation is, poor leaders ask, who's at fault? Strong leaders ask, where did the process break down? And so the chapter begins with a story to illustrate the difference between responsibility, accountability, and blame. In July 2016, an accused murderer escaped from a courthouse in Broward County, Florida. In the immediate aftermath, the Broward County Sheriff blamed the county commission for the prisoner's escape. In fact, his statement to the press began and ended with him blasting the county for failing to provide adequate funding to his department. Somewhere in between his castigation of the commission, he happened to mention that the prisoner was armed and extremely dangerous. The commission was quick to respond, detailing how much money they had allocated and questioning whether the sheriff had effectively and efficiently utilized the money for the designated purpose. Based on the facts as reported, both the sheriff and the commission were operating on the lower rungs of the accountability ladder, in that they were exclusively focused on assigning blame and making excuses. Neither party accepted responsibility. The statements of both parties reflected a mindset of powerlessness. Blame focuses exclusively on finding fault. As such, it anchors itself in the past with no orientation towards the future. It has a distinctively punitive orientation, as opposed to a desire to learn and improve. If you allow the focus to remain on blame, there's no guarantee that the undesired outcome will not be repeated. There's no guarantee that you will learn. Responsibility. In the context of our current discussion, the word responsible is value neutral. That is, it's not good or bad. A working definition for responsibility is having an obligation to do something or having control over or care for someone as part of one's job role. The Broward County Sheriff, by virtue of the authority vested in his position, was responsible for the care and control of the prisoners in the courthouse that day. So that's responsibility. Accountability now. A working definition of accountability is the condition wherein a person is expected to take ownership of their actions or decisions. Accountability follows from responsibility in that you are called to give account of your handling of an area of responsibility. While, as previously stated, responsibility is value neutral, accountability tends to come into play when the outcome of the administration of your responsibility is less than or otherwise inconsistent with expectations or agreed performance standards. In the case of the escape from the courthouse, in pursuit of accountability, The sheriff should have investigated, or at least caused to be investigated, the sequence of events to identify exactly how the prisoner was able to escape, where exactly security was breached or compromised, and what measures could be put in place to rectify any weaknesses in the system. So that excerpt from chapter 5 makes the distinction between responsibility, accountability, and blame. And the goal should always be to be accountable, to take responsibility for what has happened, to investigate, identify solutions, and to implement those solutions. The third element under the managing self caption would be to emphasize the importance of self-care. And as HR practitioners, far too often, we don't do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. And this can happen with other managers as well. So I devote a chapter to replenishing your cup, to taking care of yourself. Because it's only when you're in a position where you're showing up, with not being overly stressed or frustrated or even physically ill that you can deliver on what is expected of you. So to recap, the three highlights from the first section of the book, which focuses on managing self, would be growing your emotional intelligence, because unlike IQ, EQ is not fixed, so you can develop it. Secondly, getting ready for when the buck stops with you so that you don't turn around and start blaming people, but rather that you hold yourself and others accountable. And then replenishing your cup so that you're able to give the best of yourself. Second challenge, managing others. And remember I told you how difficult it can be to manage people. So what I've come up with in this regard is what I refer to as my relationship building block model. And over the years, this is something that I've studied both as part of helping me learn and grow as a manager myself. And then when I go into organizations, and invariably you'll find that dysfunctional relationships are at the root of so much of what's happening within the organization. And so I've come up with these 6 things which I consider to be absolutely fundamental to mutually beneficial relationships, and not just in the workplace in general. And it starts with a positive mindset, an open instead of a closed mindset, a growth instead of a fixed mindset. And if you notice where trust is positioned, trust is pivotal. And in a little bit, I'm going to share another reading that deals with trust and the model that I've come up with for trust. Because while the relationship building block model has a chapter, trust has a chapter all its own because it's so fundamental, it's so important. Effective communication is another major building blocks for good relationships. And there's a quotation that I like it's attributed to George Bernard Shaw. And he said that the biggest myth around communication is the illusion that it has taken place at all. Sending out an email, sending out a memo, or even saying something to someone is not necessarily communication, because what is communication is about creating shared meaning and understanding. If you just say something without the feedback loop, how do you know that they understand what it is you are seeking to convey, that you do have shared meaning and understanding? So in effective communication, having a feedback loop is really important. Respect is another fundamental building block, as is empathy. And I've crowned it out with the platinum rule. So the platinum rule is not as familiar as its cousin, the golden rule. And the golden rule we know comes straight from the Bible, and it's sound Judeo-Christian principle. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. However, when it comes to management, I advocate that you adopt the platinum rule instead of the golden rule. What is the platinum rule? Do unto others as they would have done unto them. The distinction there is acknowledging that everyone is not like you. It's embracing diversity. because I may like things to be done a certain way. I may need to be recognized in a certain way, and someone else may feel totally different about it. So if you're walking around treating everyone exactly the same, it's inevitable that some people are not going to feel heard. They're not going to feel understood because the approach will not fit them. And so, as I mentioned, I'd like to share a short reading from the chapter on trust. This is chapter 8. And as I mentioned before, it begins with a quotation. And here's the quotation for the chapter on building trust. As a boss, you can demand compliance, but you must earn commitment. And the coin of that realm is trust. You're not going to get people being committed to you unless they trust you. So how do you get people to trust you? Now, the model that I've developed, I posit that there are 4 components to trust. And here's the answer. There's a tendency to view trust as an all or nothing variable. Either you trust someone or you don't. In reality, it's much more nuanced and contextual than that. It is useful to break down the concept of trust into 4 elements, namely competence, character, benevolence, and consistency. When you don't trust someone, that could be because you question their competence or ability to complete the task at hand. Or maybe you have doubts or questions about their character, their honesty, their integrity. Or perhaps you have reason to question whether they have your best interests at heart. Or it could be that their performance has been inconsistent, thereby creating some doubt or concern about whether they will deliver this time around. And consistency, I refer to this as a meta competency because you have to overlay it on the other 3. So you need to be consistently competent, not that you're good at this task, but this other thing, you're not there yet. So consistently competent, consistently of good character. You can't be honest and full of integrity and with strong core values this week, but next week, that's your week for lying and cheating. Consistently of good character and consistently benevolent. People need to know that you genuinely, authentically care about them. Not when you want them to do something for you, but always. And when you have that, these people will trust you and they will go to bat for you every single time. That has been my experience as a manager, as a leader. Once my people know that I got their back, I genuinely care for them, they will go to the end with me. And I mean, it's important when you're going through the tough times to know that you have that, not compliance, but commitment to be with you and to get the job done. So that's the relationship building block model with a special focus on the trust component. I love the situational leadership model. And, you know, sometimes, and I've had managers say this to me, even since I wrote the book and I've been doing these types of presentations. There was one corporate client that I was doing a presentation with. We were talking about employee engagement, and I was talking about the platinum rule and the importance of meeting your direct reports where they are and helping them to get where you need them to be. And one of the managers said, and I mean, she wasn't even shy about it. She was like, listen, I have a management style, and once you're assigned to my department, it's up to you to get in line with my management style. And I was like, wow, how's that working out for you? Right? Leadership is situational. You cannot go around treating everything as if it's a nail because all you have is a hammer. Right? There's some things that are not nails. If you encounter a screw, you need a screwdriver, not a hammer to deal with that. And so there's a chapter that's devoted in the book to situational leadership, where I help you to identify what's the appropriate management style for a given individual for a given task. Because a given individual in one situation and with one task, they could have the knowledge and the ability. So all you need to do is to delegate to them and leave them alone and let them get it done. But there may be another task where either they don't have the knowledge for it or they're not that enthusiastic about doing it. So how you manage them in relation to their working on that second task, it cannot be the same as you would manage them when they're doing a task where they have the knowledge, they have the ability, and they're willing to do it. So it's important to be able to diagnose where is this particular direct report in relation to this particular task when it comes to ability and willingness to execute the function, and then to adjust your management or your leadership accordingly. So delegation is not something that managers tend to be very good at. We're reluctant to do it, and oftentimes that's because we think they're not going to do it as well as I can, so I might as well just do it myself so I don't have to fix it afterwards. Here's the challenge with that. If you continue doing it yourself, they will never develop the ability to do it as well as you can do it. So you will always be doing it. And that doesn't free you up to deal with the higher level, more strategic things that are on your plate. So when you're delegating, it's important to give persons the responsibility to carry out the task, to give them the authority to carry out the task, and then to hold them accountable. And what's not in this diagram, but which I would advise you to do, is to realize that sometimes good enough is good enough. It doesn't always have to be perfect, people. And you have to let people know that you are willing to give them the room to learn and grow. They will get there with your support, with your guidance, with your coaching, with your mentoring, if you make it safe for them to grow and learn in the role. All right, so managing others, highlights, importance of building relationships, matching your leadership to the situation, and learning to delegate effectively. So the third challenge now is about managing systems and processes, because within organizations, we all have to utilize systems and processes to get things done. And sometimes we have the best people in terms of they have the right attitude, they're willing to do the work, they have the right work ethic, but the organization has flawed systems and processes. And those will frustrate the heck out of your people and probably out of you as well. So one of the tools that I present to help you to put systems in place to get the best out of your team is for you to be able to coach them. And so this is a GROW model, and it is a performance coaching model. And this is a way that you can engage with each of your direct reports so that each of them is able to maximize their potential and you can hold them accountable. So GROW is an acronym. So the G is for the goal. So you establish what is it that you want this employee to do. And that will be informed by whatever your departmental goals and objectives are. You cascade them down to the individual level. So it is absolutely clear for each and every one of your direct reports, this is the goal towards which you're working. Then we get to the R, which is the reality. So we have established what the goal is. What's the reality? Where are you now in relation to this goal? And when you compare the goal to the reality, that enables you to identify the performance gap that needs to be closed. So having identified the gap now, you then proceed to options. So, and it's important here in coaching, when you're coaching, you're not giving the answers, you're using questions and active listening to draw the answers out from your direct reports. So you've identified the goal, you've identified where they are, have the conversation about that so that you identify the gaps, and then you ask them, what is it that you could do to begin to close this gap? And listen to what they come up with. They may not hit it out of the park with their first answer or the second or the third. Build on what they present. Don't just ignore it. Don't just gloss over it. You may need to ask further questions for them to think more deeply in terms of whether or not that would actually close the performance gap, but help to build on what they have so that at the end of the day, they have ownership for it. And that brings us to the W. This is where you get the commitment. What will you do going forward to close the gap and help us to get to that goal? And so in every coaching conversation, it must end with a commitment from the individual being coached to do something to help to close the gap that has been identified. And then we come back to the accountability. You set the time to follow up and you hold them accountable for executing on the plans that you agreed together. Another system that drives people absolutely nuts is meetings, death by meetings. And I mean, this chapter has been resonating with the folks who have been reviewing the book, and folks who have already gotten their copies of the book have been sending back feedback about the great meeting. So this is chapter 17, which originally I thought was going to be the last chapter in the book, but I'll tell you about that in a little bit. So the lead quote for chapter 17, which is captioned "Conducting Great Meetings." A meeting is an event at which the minutes are kept and the hours are lost. Who hasn't been in a meeting where you find yourself wondering, why am I here? What is this about? When is it going to end? They're wasting my time. There's so many other things I could be doing instead of sitting here, right? So there's some tips and strategies that I've presented to help you minimize, if not eliminate, the possibility that you're the one convening these awful meetings. And the chapter also tells you what you can do if you're the hostage. That is, you've been summoned to a meeting. It has no clear purpose. You have no idea what they're trying to accomplish. There's no agenda. You wondering why you there and why you never hear from them again. Okay, until they call you to another meeting. So here's the reading from chapter 17. So in your role as manager, I strongly encourage you to take note of the following tips designed to help you, as well as the hapless folks whom you may have unwittingly been holding hostage up to this point in time. 1, always distribute an agenda. An agenda including the purpose of the meeting should be distributed to all participants well in advance of the meeting. Why? So that they can prepare. 2, ensure that you have the right people in the room. Large meetings with attendees who are disengaged encourage social loafing, while the failure to have the right people in the room can prevent you from making decisions or from having the information you need to make the best possible decisions. 3, keep the meeting as short as possible. Bear in mind that work expands to fill the space available. So if participants know that only an hour has been allocated for the meeting, they're less likely to squander the time. 4, send out meeting notes. The sooner you do this, the better. Sending out a summary of salient points, decisions taken, action items, due dates, and the people responsible for said action items helps to create and/or maintain a sense of urgency, especially if you do so within 24 hours of the meeting. And finally, 5, follow up. Folks are busy. So if you don't follow up, your issues are likely to be placed on the back burner, if not fall off the stove completely. So you, with the manager's first aid kit, have the tools at your disposal to ensure that all your meetings are great meetings. So this is the topic for the final chapter of the book. So as I indicated, I thought I was done when I wrote the chapter on having great meetings. But then when I did some focus groups and market research and showed folks the table of contents and asked them, what do you think is missing? What else would you like to see in a book like this? And I mean, the vast majority came back with time management. So that was a challenge for me because personally, I don't believe in time management. I don't think it's a thing. Time is what it is. And so my chapter on time management is not about time management, rather it's about managing priorities and the choices you make about what you do with your time. Because you're not going to create more time. Time is what it is, and it flows at the pace that it will flow at. You're not going to slow it down. You're not going to speed it up. What you do is decide how you're going to spend the time that's available to you. And unfortunately, too many of us don't take ownership of that. So it's whoever asked you to do something is going to make it onto your to-do list, and that will determine what you're doing, as opposed to being very mindful, being very strategic, being very intentional about what makes it into your calendar, what makes it into your schedule. And so in the book, I explore how you can go about setting priorities, and even more importantly, how to say no. Because if you're going to manage your priorities, manage your choices, you will need to start saying no to some things that are on your schedule right now, which can be done by someone else, or which don't need to be done at all. But you want to do that in a way, you want to communicate that in a way that it doesn't damage relationships. And so I take a really deep dive on that, how you say no without damaging relationship. Because if you don't care about the person, you just tell them no. If they're vexed, who cares? But it's when you're dealing with people that you care about, the people that you want to maintain relationship with, that your no sometimes just can't be no, and it's the end of the conversation. All right, so the three highlights from managing processes and systems: performance coaching, having great meetings, and time management, which, as I said, isn't time management at all. It's about setting priorities and making choices. So all this and more you have covered in Manager's First Aid Kit. It's available on Amazon. It's also available from Best of Books starting from Saturday. And you can also get it on my website, joanhunderwood.com. In fact, the book is generally available on all online bookstores. So you can Google it and you can find it, Barnes and Nobles. I don't even know all the names of all of them, but it's in wide circulation. If you would like to participate in my pre-order campaign, which closes at midnight on Thursday, you can visit me at joanhunderwood.com. Why would you want to participate in that campaign? Well, there are two reasons. One, there's a 20% discount on the purchase of the book. And two, everyone who participates in the campaign is entered into a draw for a free emotional intelligence assessment and a complimentary 1-hour coaching call with me. The book is also available for bulk purchase, wholesale purchase, and this is where the action has been since, I started promoting the book. We have companies and individual managers who have used their budget to order the book as Christmas gifts for their teams. The Cayman Islands government ordered 40 copies of the book to give to members of their management team. The government of St. Lucia has also ordered, wholesale copies so that they can distribute it to members of their middle management team. So the beauty about doing the wholesale purchases is that you also have the opportunity to have the book personalized. What do I mean by that? So let's say, for example, Sagicor wants to get copies of the book, which they have. And what they've done, they've co-branded it. So the Sagicor logo appears on the first, once you open the cover, it's right there, the Sagicor logo, and each person has been able to, each of the managers, because I've had multiple managers from Sagicor order it, they have written a personal message to their team so that when they get the book and they open it thinking, it's the same book that everybody else has, there's a Sagicor logo and a message from their manager to them. So that's something that if you want to pursue, you can shoot me an email at info@utdsinc.com. So that's the end of the presentation. I would love to open up now, Nicole. I don't know if any questions or comments have been placed in the chat box, or if anyone would like to engage at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Joan. I take it, Nicole. Thank you very much, Joan. I appreciate you and the time spent with us so far. Like you said, open it up now for anyone to ask questions, to make further comments. We have a few more minutes together, but feel free at this point now to share whatever or make whatever intervention you have or you like to make. Okay. I know in HRPAB we have a few new managers, a few persons who are new to HR, new to leadership. So I thought that this would be a wonderful opportunity for them to get this information firsthand. There are numerous opportunities, like Joan just described, to get your hands on a copy of the book, whether physically or electronically. We have Joan at our disposal, so my advice to you would be to get a physical copy so you can get your personalized message, not just personalized, but handwritten straight from the author. That would be an awesome way to go. But if you are new to HR, new to leadership, or even those of us who have been doing this for a while and some even longer than others, I think there are some real gems here, some great reminders. The chapter on we can't pour from an empty cup is something that we've been saying for about a year now, just to remind ourselves, and 2020 has been a year of reminder as far as that is concerned. Get ready for when the buck stops. That spoke to me as well. And as well as sometimes good enough is good enough. For those of us who are perfectionists by nature, and we tend to go over the same thing over and over and eventually end up wasting time, sometimes it is what it is, and good enough is good enough, and sometimes just to move on. Okay. So thank you very much, Joan.
Laurie?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a question sent to me directly, so I'll share that and answer it. And also, Janet was asking, what is the cost? So the special pricing is in effect until the end of December. So the paperback, black and white version of the book is retailing at 40 EC. Again, this is only until the 31st of December. This is my Christmas gift to all and sundry. The price will definitely be going up from January. If you wanted to get the full color version of the book, that is, of course, because of the color printing, a bit more. I think that's like $55, right? So, and that's the one that you can get personalized as well. So the question that came to me directly is, how would you approach leading a team where there is no trust, no cohesion, no teamwork? All right. And it's absolutely essential that you deal with that situation in terms of no trust. And I particularly like Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. For some of you, you may have heard me. I've been in training where I've gone through this. Because an absence of trust, if you don't have that, your team cannot be high performance. It's just impossible. It's not going to happen. Right? The type of synergy you need to have a high performance team will not exist if your people don't trust each other. And if you don't trust each other, people are not going to commit to the team. If they don't commit to the team, they're not going to be willing to be held accountable to achieving the results. And so it's interesting that you ask about this. I think it was, okay, I don't need to say who it was. I'm actually designing right now an intervention for a client, and this is a state-owned entity in Jamaica. And they came to me with this issue. They're like, the team is not performing. We've done training and we're still not getting the type of performance that we need. And so they're like, we need you to come in and do some training. I said, I don't know that your issue is a lack of training. As you yourself have said, you've done training and it hasn't produced the desired results. Instead, I would like to find out what's going on in terms of the team dynamics. And so we just started this engagement this week. So I sent them a survey, and this is from the Patrick Lencioni model, where we're going to diagnose what exactly is wrong with the team. And starting next week, I'll be interviewing the members of the management and supervisory staff. So the first thing I do before I design anything is let's diagnose what's happening in the organization, because just because you don't have trust, that you don't have a team that's functioning, doesn't mean it's the same cause of the problem each time. And so, I mean, you don't want to be giving a wrong solution. So the first step is to diagnose What is the cause of this lack of trust, this lack of cohesion, this lack of teamwork? So it's only after I go through the survey, review the results of the interviews, that I'll be able to say, okay, here's what I've found, and here's the intervention that I've designed in order to address that. So the short answer is there's no silver bullet that will always fix a lack of trust, a lack of cohesion, a lack of teamwork, because you first have to figure out what's the genesis, what's the origin of the problem, and then deal with that, as opposed to just using a cookie cutter approach and figuring this will fix all. So thanks for that question.
On top of that, Joan, let me add and ask as well, how would you advise younger managers, especially if you're leading or your direct reports are older person in age and sometimes experience and seniority with the company, been with the company longer, you're a younger manager, maybe just coming into the company. What kind of advice would you give a younger manager, especially if he or she is leading older persons?
Okay, so let me ensure that I'm asking. So you want to know, my manager is older than me, has been around for a long time, how to engage with them, one, and two, what if I have older people that report to me?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay,
no,
great.
The question I'm asking, you're a young leader, a young manager, you're just promoted into leadership position and your direct reports are all older persons.
Also, all my direct reports, all right. So the thing is to acknowledge the value that they bring to the table, okay? Because sometimes when we come in as younger persons, well, I can't refer to myself as a younger person anymore. It may, whether intentionally or not, we may create the impression that we have all the answers and what existed before us, you know, is no longer of value. I mean, that's getting off to the wrong foot. And again, you want commitment, not just compliance. And to get commitment as opposed to compliance. And compliance can be malicious because they will see you going down the wrong road and allow you to go because you know everything. So ensure that you communicate that you genuinely value their input, that you value them as individuals, and be open in your communication. Remember the relationship building block model, all right? So have an open mindset, build up the trust, show them respect, show them empathy, use the platinum rule instead of the golden rule, and find something that you can all, you know, rally around in terms of this is our purpose, this is what we want to accomplish here, and solicit their buy-in, get the commitment. Because the thing is, if you get somebody to commit to something, to vocalize it, cognitive dissonance would reduce the likelihood that they would actively undermine you. They have some people that don't have no conscience, so they will do it. But the average person, if they're given a commitment to do something, they're gonna think twice about reneging on that commitment. So be open in terms of your mind, you know, open mindset as opposed to a closed one. Value your people, show them that you value them, and help them be part of identifying the solution and the way forward, rather than thinking that, you know, you are the author and arbiter of everything. So that would be my recommendation in terms of how you navigate what could be tricky territory. Value your people and what they bring to the table.
Thank you very much for that. There's a question in the chat, which is sort of similar to the question that I have. And the question is there a way forward for those persons who have to lead from under the bus?
All right. So here's the thing. You have to find a way forward. Staying under the bus and making, you know, putting up curtains and so on under there is not an option. You have to get from out under there, right? So they're bad bosses, and they're bosses who, you know, their default is the blame game. But you can lead from where you are. You can lead up, right? And I have an entire chapter that's devoted to how do you manage your boss. and not the good ones, because the good ones are easy to manage, the difficult ones. And the very first thing that I would say to you in relation to that is realize that it's not about you. Because sometimes you can really start beating yourself up and get depressed about it. Realize that that person may or may not have issues. They may have some pressure coming down on them, and you know, they say stuff flows downhill. So it comes down on them and they push it down on you. But there's some very specific things that you can do, because don't make it about you and don't make it about the individual and their personality. Make it about the work. So find out what it is that this person needs to accomplish. So what are departmental goals and objectives? What's your role in delivering on those? So have a conversation about expectations. Ask questions. And then ask some more questions so that you're absolutely clear what the expectations are. Then once you've clarified those expectations, make sure you deliver on them and deliver well. So if they come back at you, your best defense is a job well done. So that's, you know, I'll leave it there. There's more in the book, but first thing I say, realize it's not about you. Focus on the work, clarify expectations, and do the best job you can.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone. We have just about the end of our hour, and I would like to say thanks to Ambassador Joan for spending this time with us, and thank you to all of you, some 19 of us, 20 of us all together online, and thank you very much for spending your lunchtime with us. Just before we go, Ambassador Joan, the launch at Best of Books on Saturday is an official launch. Should we expect to see you there?
That in. Okay. Yes, I'll be at Best of Books from midday to 2 p.m. Okay. Midday to 2 p.m. at Best of Books. So come on by. If you have questions you'd like me to answer. I have to tell you, I have a high-class problem. Amerijet is late showing up with the rest of the inventory, and the books have been selling like crazy. So if you want to leave with a book in your hand, an autograph book in your hand on Saturday, come early. Okay. Because I have more books on the way, but I don't know if they're going to get here in time. But I'm going to be around for a while. If you don't pick up your book on Saturday, you can get it, you know, afterwards once Amerijet touches down with and I've actually sent to Barbuda to get some of those that I have there. So for sure, I have some coming from Barbados on Saturday. Not sure what time the flight will get in yet, but the books are coming and you'll be able to get your hands on them.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and be good to yourself and stay safe. Good afternoon.
Bye. Thanks for having me, everyone.
You're welcome.